Hi, I'm Darcy, and welcome to our webinar replay. This was a live webinar, but now you can watch it at your leisure. Feel free to skip chapters as you'd like by clicking that icon in the lower right-hand corner. All right, without further ado, I'll hand it on over to Heather May.
So let's get started with some context. One of the busiest times each year is going to be that period from October to December, because in a very short time there are back-to-back holidays which really seem to zap the time, and it really makes it fly by. So if you're not prepared, it's really easy to miss out on the opportunities for your brand or service to be seen. So as if 2020 hasn't thrown us enough curveballs, an article from BBC is projecting a higher than usual surge in online spending this year. Even before the lockdown started, online sales were already roughly 5% higher than last year, which is pretty remarkable. In 2019, e-commerce accounted for 20% of total holiday sales. And with the current pandemic, it seems reasonable and probably responsible that most people will be leaning into the holiday shopping and being online this year. So with that many people online, it's really important to have your social media plan in place sooner than later. So let's hop in, shall we, Sophie?
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, right. So there we go. Oh, sorry, I didn't share that slide with you all as we were going through it. So if you give that a moment. I'm going to also share one more poll with you all. And this one is kind of in terms of how you are planning your strategy and things like that. So this has to do with your content calendar. So I'll launch that poll for you all and give you a couple minutes. So the options there are going to be ability to change what is planned or scheduled. You can also select multiple options here. So ability to change what is planned or scheduled, visibility of content scheduled across channels, ability to see how posts are performing in real time, and then option to share upcoming content plans with others. So I'll give you all a few moments to kind of cast your ballots in terms of which of those features are really helpful when you're looking for a content calendar. And we have some fun resources to share with you a little bit later as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It looks like for a number of people, the visibility of content scheduled across channels is really helpful, and can validate that. We know that our calendar within Buffer is pretty bare bones at this point, and our team is really excited to kind of continue looking at how we can improve that. And so hearing all of these insights is really helpful, and I'm excited to be able to share this information with our team as well.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm excited to see the results too.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to end.
It's a big project for us.
And then share the results with everyone. So there's a little peek at kind of what all of you are feeling are important pieces that would be helpful for your content calendar. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that poll now, and we're going to get into the chat. All right. Sophie, do you want to share a little bit more about your role? I know you shared a little bit about your what you do here at Buffer. Do you want to share a little bit about your background as well?
Yeah, of course. I've been living in the US I was living in the US for about the past 10 years. I'm originally from Italy, Milan though, and grew up there, then moved to the US, was mostly between Santa Barbara and San Francisco. So feel free to add a comment in the chatter box if that's where you're located. So worked there, and previously to Buffer, I actually worked at Brandless, which is a D2C e-commerce company. So a lot of the tips that I'm giving today are not only specific to, B2B industry, but also to B2C. So if that's the space that you're working in, B2C, then you're also in the right spot. Now I'm located in Lisbon, Portugal, and I've been spending a lot of my time surfing. I recently got a new digital camera, so I've also been traveling all around, obviously just being very careful of the situation, but I have been traveling a bit around the country and snapping a lot of pics. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'm happy to jump in.
All right. So let's get into kind of the bones of our chat today. So where do you start? So with such a strong emphasis on social media strategy during the holidays, where do you really get started?
Great question. Where do you start? I would say that your first crucial step is to set goals for your holiday marketing strategy and campaign. Is if your goal is to drive sales, your goal could also be to promote a new offer, to increase brand awareness, to drive traffic to your website, to shift your brand positioning, to increase your engagement rate. As you can see, there are so many goals, which is why it's really, really important to set your goal first and to kind of consider the why of your campaign, because that is kind of what's going to help you guide your entire holiday marketing strategy. And so by setting your goal first, you'll be able to frame your campaign concept, your offer, your partnerships, your copy and creative around your goals. Because your entire marketing campaign will be completely different if, for example, you focus your goal on increasing awareness of your social impact initiatives versus, for example, if your goal was to increase your sales. So in the example of increasing brand awareness of your social impact initiatives, your copy and creative will be a lot more focused probably on like your brand ethos or your brand mission, rather than focusing on the products and services that you offer. On the other hand, if your goal is to drive sales, then a lot of your copy and content will be focused on your products and services. So your copy might be focused more on like your link in bio or swipe up, so that you can like drive the traffic from your social channels to your website, so that you can reach your goal of driving more sales. And then also your imagery, for example, might be a little bit more focused on user-generated content where a person is showcasing how they use your specific product or your service. So that's really why it's so important to set your goals first. It's because everything else that comes later will start from your goal, and everything might change completely if your goal is different. Another reason why it's really important to set a goal is because it really keeps your campaign focused, and it provides a way for you to track your success throughout the entire campaign, so that you can also celebrate at the end of the campaign period.
Yeah.
And then one last thing I wanted to mention, and I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of this, but this is something that I keep in mind when I'm setting goals for the campaigns here at Buffer, is that I like to keep my goal setting SMART. And so SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So instead of saying, for example, that your goal is to increase traffic from social media, you would want to say something more like, during the month of December, so that's the time bound aspect there, I will increase click-through rate by 7% from Instagram. And to do so, I will collaborate with X and X person from the creative team to produce the concept, the creative, and the copy. And then I will also work with X and X person from the marketing team to set up an attractive holiday marketing strategy and offer. So that's the difference there. It's a lot harder to reach your goal if you just say to increase traffic from social media, because it's like you can literally increase traffic in so many different ways. So I think it's really important to be super specific, and again, make it measurable. So I added that 7%, make it measurable so that you know exactly when you've reached your goal. And then attainable, relevant, and time bound.
Yeah. I love acronyms. It always helps me remember like those different steps. So if you're like me also, feel free to grab a screenshot if that's something that would be helpful for you. You also mentioned kind of tracking campaigns, and I love that within Buffer, for anyone that has already discovered it, or if you haven't discovered it, we have a campaigns feature, and I think this could be a really awesome way to use that. So as you're thinking about planning out your holiday strategy, you can use the campaigns area within Buffer to, when you're scheduling those posts, assign it to a campaign, and then at the end, you can use your campaigns reports within Analyze to be able to see how that campaign performed kind of across all of your social channels that are connected. So definitely a really neat way to use that and make sure that you're tracking those details.
Yeah, that's what we use Yeah, even just, for the campaigns that are coming up, I know I'll be using that feature. And then also just for the I don't know if you joined for our last webinar, but when we talked about boosted posts, that entire campaign was done through our campaigns feature. And it's really great because it's all there together and you can just pretty much just download it and share it with the team.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So we also I mentioned kind of tracking across channels. So that's something else that I would love to kind of touch on in terms of social channels. So I think that it can often be really overwhelming to try and cover all of the channels that are out there. And I think a better approach for kind of a holiday strategy is going to likely pick maybe one or two channels that you're going to focus on and plan content strategy or content accordingly based on those channels. Does that feel right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's always my one recommendation. In fact, later I'm going to also share a quote from somebody that we've worked with in the past. But yes, it is really important, especially if you're a smaller team or if you're kind of on a tight timeline. You don't have to do it all. So yes, completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're picking your content and channels, another thing that's really important to keep in mind is to be native to the platform that you're telling your story in. So what I mean by that is that, for example, okay, you post something on Instagram, like just an Instagram feed post. You wouldn't want to take that same content and post it to TikTok or to Twitter. The reason why is because, well, first of all, your creative probably is not fit correctly for the other channels, but also because like maybe your copy says, oh, head to the link in bio, or also just like an Instagram story will say swipe up rather, but on the other hand, like TikTok has swipe left. So you just really need to keep that in mind when you're creating copy and creative, is that you can't just take one piece of copy and one piece of creative and just put it across every single social network, because it won't work. And then also another thing is that your audience will be very different in terms of demographic and interests across your social networks. So again, your follower on TikTok or Instagram will be different from your follower on Facebook or Twitter. So there's just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think about when I'm scheduling content, definitely, I think about the different channels in terms of like the copy and like how I'm directing people to either click link in bio or the different actions that you might call them to. But I don't necessarily think about the audiences being entirely different. So that's a really great point to keep in mind, because just because someone follows you on one platform doesn't necessarily mean that they're following you on another channel. So that's a really good point.
Sometimes they are completely different. So it's really important to keep that in mind when you're thinking about the content that you're creating for each of your social networks.
Yeah, so I created this little slide of all of the types of posts by channel, and I feel like this is a really nice visual of how overwhelming it can feel in terms of so many different options. So so I think it's okay to say no to, to trying to tackle every channel. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the details for the channels to keep in mind when creating the content?
Yeah, of course. So I know that one thing that always is super difficult for me when I'm creating content is like remembering all the aspect ratios and the measurements. So that's why I thought I'd add them in here for you. So please do take a screenshot of this and kind of just keep it on your desktop so that you can quickly open it up whenever you're creating something for one of your channels. But again, I think as you said, this really helps you understand like how many different options there are. That's why it's totally okay to say no to some. You can't do it all. And, I'm speaking just from experience. I can't do it all. I'm a, team of one, and, I have help from the rest of the marketing team, and Heather May, I know you always share great ideas with me too. But it is really hard to do it all. But anyway, what I've kind of summarized here is kind of like all the types of posts that you can post on each of the social channels. And then, I added some of the measurements here so that you can reference them in the future if you ever are looking for those measurements.
Yeah, I think something to keep in mind too is there are some differences when it comes to scheduling, especially within Buffer. So if you're scheduling Instagram posts within Buffer, there are some aspect ratios that it's really important to keep in mind because that's going to determine whether you're able to direct schedule that post so it goes out automatically or whether you're going to get a reminder. And so thinking about those things, if you're wanting to lighten your load, then I think making sure that you're scheduling those square one-to-one ratio posts that are able to go out automatically is going to keep everything going and the ball rolling as you intend it to. So, yeah, I think this is really helpful. And often we get questions about why a post maybe didn't go out, and it might be just because that aspect ratio was slightly off. And this is a little pro tip. Sometimes when using photo editing programs, I know that there are a couple out there that when you're editing and you choose the Instagram setting, the aspect ratios actually aren't exact enough that when we try and send it through, Instagram actually kicks it back as not meeting the aspect ratio. So make sure that when you're checking them, you're not depending solely on those presets within the photo editing software, but you're making sure that the aspect ratios are exact. So maybe right-clicking on the image and checking the info on it to make sure that everything aligns there can be helpful.
Yes, good tip, good tip.
All right.
And,
you had that quote
yes.
that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so this is the quote that I was talking about. So just some context. Jackie, we collaborated with her on this campaign that we call the Buffer Brand Spotlight, where we spotlight really cool brands out there and kind of how they're approaching social media in possibly even a different way. So Jackie, she's the head of community and social at Jock Coffee, which is a newly launched D2C coffee brand. I think they launched earlier this year, possibly April. So this quote is very specific to, I guess, them launching their brand, but I think it's still very, very much relevant to any type of launch, even a holiday marketing launch or a new product launch. So I'm going to read through this I'm just going to read through it. So I'd establish yourself on all the main social channels and try to keep a consistent handle across all platforms, but figure out which channels are going to be your main focus. For us as a D2C consumer product, it made sense that Instagram and to an extent Facebook would be an important part of our marketing strategy. So it was really essential that we nailed it on all those platforms. We have more flexibility when it comes to posting cadence and strategy for our other platforms like LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, and TikTok, which allows us to be a little more experimental in our content. This is the part that I've mentioned this before, but I think this is the part that's really important. When you are a small startup, you are only going to have so many resources, time, budget, manpower to devote to your social channels. So invest wisely in your primary channels while maintaining relevant content on your secondary channels. And so this is what we were talking about. It's what she says is 100% accurate. If you are a small team of one, don't feel like you need to be on every single platform. Picking and choosing will make this entire process so much easier for you. And then it will also give you back the time to really focus on the actual content. Just good to keep in mind.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about dates. So planning and scheduling out your content for the season can really save you time in the long run. Also, the importance of having all of your social profiles up to date and making sure that your bios are updated, any links that you're wanting to share, if you're using Instagram link in bio, making sure that anything that is being linked from that place is also updated and that you have kind of all your ducks in a row in that way. Another thing that would be helpful to have in those social profiles is making sure that there's a way to contact you, especially during a busy season like this. If a customer needs to reach out, or any follower, you want to make sure that they have a direct line to contact and that they know how to reach you. All right, so key dates that we're going to kind of talk about. Do you want to kind of share with us some of the things that are helpful to keep in mind when it comes to the dates?
Yeah, absolutely. So marketing campaigns are always very hectic, but also a lot of fun. So I think it's really important to do as much of the heavy lifting beforehand so that you can just sit back and relax on the campaign launch day and then just sort of enjoy the show. So the main deadline that you should keep in mind is the holiday marketing launch date. And then you should let that act as your starting point, and then you just build your timeline backwards from there. So I think a couple of questions that you could keep in mind that, or you should ask yourself when working backwards are, for example, how many design assets will you need? How are you collaborating with influencers or brand ambassadors or any other type of organization on this campaign? Because if you are, then that will probably take a lot of just like back and forth between emails or DMs. So it's good to keep that in mind. Do you need to organize a photo shoot? And then also, what else do you need from your teammates? I think just thinking entirely about all of the deliverables that you need to make your marketing campaign a success is really important. So I think, yeah, this will give you a clear idea of how much lead time you're working with and also the potential scope of the project. If you're running on a tight deadline, you might want to scale back on some of those ideas that are a bit more ambitious of your campaign. So that's why I think it's really important to ask yourself these questions before. So you have a really good idea of like how much time you'll actually need. So to give you a little bit more perspective, or I guess an example from the Buffer side, we usually start planning the social media aspect of a campaign about a month before the official marketing campaign launch. And so I'm talking about the social media perspective just because, or the social media aspect, just because then there's also like the email aspect. There's all of these other channels to keep in mind, right? But if you're just focusing on the social side of things, then I think like a month is good. I think it's solid. If you have less, then that's when you maybe should start rethinking a couple of those ideas that were a bit more ambitious. Another thing to keep in mind, I mentioned this here about organizing a photo shoot, but if you do have a physical product instead of a digital product, you might need more time to account for those photo shoots as well.
Yeah, I think when I think about the holiday season, especially because there are so many back-to-back dates, if you're thinking about one campaign and you're planning a month out, I think that's where thinking about holiday strategy really ahead of time can be helpful. And so I think this is a great opportunity, if you haven't thought about it in that context, to be able to take the learnings from this year and apply it to next year and start the planning process early. I know that we've talked to some brands that start their holiday strategies in like July and August to like start in September. And that was really illuminating for me to think about how far in advance they're planning for those things. And so when you talk about the like a month out from a launch or something being kind of the normal context, it makes sense that when you have date after date after date that you would need even more time. So that's really helpful to kind of understand.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think you need to give yourself permission to say no to some things. It's totally okay. And I know even here at Buffer, we've said no to some things, but we also said, oh, it's okay. We have the initial concept, so we'll just save it for next year.
Yeah,
there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that.
Yeah. So if you don't already have a marketing calendar or a content calendar template, we actually threw one together that we would love to share with you. I'll go ahead and drop that link in the chat area for you all. And then let's see, I'll grab that link for you.
Yeah, I'm really happy we're sharing this. So for now, I've only added major key dates that are happening from October until December. But I think I'm going to keep this as like an ongoing calendar, and I'll also update it with all of the events that will be happening next year as well. So definitely download it into your Google Calendar. I think it's really good to have that as like an option to add to your calendar, just because you know, a lot of the time, it's also happened to me, I admit it, the day of, you're like, oh my goodness, it's watermelon day. And, you know, I wanted to promote this. I had so many ideas for this. And so if you have it in your calendar, then as you look at the weeks ahead, then you can actually just plan a little bit. Just plan better.
I think some of the really fun things too, and we included some of these on our calendar, are some of the lesser known holidays that are fun to do campaigns around. So for instance, tomorrow is National Checklist Day. So what a great time to really make your list for your holiday strategy. You can take some time tomorrow and get into the checklist holiday spirit and make that list for how you can really execute. Another one that I thought was kind of fun is December 3rd is Make a Gift Day. And so when I saw that, I immediately kind of started thinking about campaigns or fun little holiday themed pushes that you could do related to that. So maybe you want to
Mhm.
get your audience engaged by challenging them to create a gift with something of your product or something that illuminates your brand, or it doesn't even have to be related to your brand. Getting that audience engaged and inviting them in is a really kind of crucial part of a successful strategy. And so you could do anything just to get those people to share content, and then you also kind of get the benefit of kind of user generated content when you do things like that. So I thought that was really kind of a fun thing.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it also helps you to stay relevant. So when everybody's, talking about a specific day or a specific holiday on a specific day, then like if you can be a part of that conversation, then people will really resonate with what you have to say.
Right. So, talking about conversation and engaging with your
Mhm.
audience and inviting them to engage with you, I think the other really important piece is going to create a plan for engagement. So, when you're sharing your content, it's really important to stay on top of engaging with your audience and creating those loyal followers. Do you want to share a little bit kind of about what that looks like?
Yes. One of my favorite parts. So if you plan and schedule all of your posts for your holiday campaign ahead of time, either through Buffer or any other social media management platform you use, then you'll be able to focus more on engaging with your audience and replying to comments and DMs during the holiday marketing campaign period, which is super important. So highly recommend scheduling and planning beforehand so that you can solely focus on engagement during while the holiday campaign is happening. So, okay, why is engaging so important? Well, first of all, social is a two-way street. That's really the big differentiation that you have between a website and a social media account. You can ask your brand a question and an awesome company will answer quickly. And I think that's just something that's so special about social media that unfortunately you can't do as often on a website. Another one is that it makes your account more human. And this is important because there is an actual human running the account. So I think if you can add that human aspect to it, then I think people will really start to feel like they can create a relationship with you. And then if you think about your own experience, when you comment on a brand's post or send them a DM, how cool is it when the brand actually answers back? That brand immediately stands out from all of the other social accounts and from the competitors as well. So I think by engaging with your customers through social, you do stand out because honestly, most companies don't answer. There's a lot of companies out there that don't answer. So definitely keep that in mind when with your social channels. And then
I might be
lastly,
alone in this, but I absolutely fangirl when like a brand responds to me,
yeah,
or like if they reshare my content, I get like so excited because if I'm taking the time to kind of mention them, it's so exciting to have them acknowledge that. So, I mean, we all want to be seen,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the whole point. It's that, I mean, we're humans. We love to be seen, we love to be heard, understood. And so if you can really give a person, a customer, that special moment where it's like, oh, yay, I like feel like an influencer, I feel like I'm appreciated, then that's awesome. Like you've already done so much with just doing something so simple. And then lastly, when you're conversing with followers and customers, you are creating a relationship with that person. And that person will become a loyal follower and possibly also a loyal customer.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So
And
how do you engage? I feel like there are a lot of ways, and when I open my social accounts, I feel like I'm bombarded with like notifications everywhere. And so, kind of, what do you think about when you're, especially managing Buffer? How do you kind of approach the engagement with our audience?
yeah, so yeah, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is to respond to comments and messages and people that tag you in posts in a timely manner. Because the sooner you answer, then the better it is, because it increases the likelihood that your user is still online and that they will actually see your reply. Another one is if you think of if you think of every post as a conversation starter, then you automatically have kind of put yourself in this area of success, because you will automatically start getting comments just replying to your post. So ask questions when you are posting something, and even in Instagram stories, do use the stickers such as questions or polls. Those are all conversation starters. And lastly, I think it's also really important to use your audience as inspiration for content and UGC.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get on board with Instagram stories and thinking about like all the stickers and the different things that you can add. And so if you're not already doing that, don't be afraid of it. Once I kind of dove in and started really getting into it, I think it was just so much fun. So, and I'd love to share a little bit of a teaser. So for any of you Buffer users that have been with us for a long time, you might be excited about this, but we have a fun feature called Engage that we'll be rolling out, and we'll be rolling this out kind of incrementally. So if you're already seeing it, that's super exciting. If you're not seeing it yet, it's coming, I promise. But on your Buffer dashboard, you're going to see a little tab up here that says Engage, and this is going to be specifically for Instagram comments. And so when you click on that tab, we're going to pull in your feed of Instagram posts, and you're going to be able to see little notifications of which ones have comments on them. And then we're also using some fun machine learning to detect what the different types of comments are. So if it's about like if it's a question, then we're going to give you that little question mark flag to let you know that. If it's a question about shopping, then we're going to detect that type of comment. And so it's kind of helpful because it can bring your attention to certain places if there are certain types of comments. We are continuing to develop that and learn based on keywords and things like that. So you'll see improvements come in terms of the detection. So it's not 100%, but we're always striving to kind of continue improving on that. So I wanted to share that little sneak peek because we're very excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Also, I want to mention how important it is to have something like this, because if you're only working from your phone and responding to comments from the Instagram app, then you might miss notifications of comments, and you might not realize that you have to answer those comments because the notification got bombarded by all of the other likes and other notifications that you have. So in a situation like this, you know exactly all of the comments that you need to respond to. And I think it's pretty satisfying to also see the number go down.
Yeah.
So
yeah, chipping away at those numbers. So
yeah.
All right. So after all of that, and you kind of have your strategy, you've set your goals, you've created your content, I think that it's really important that we think about measuring our success. So looking back on those goals that you set, how did you do? What did you learn? Share a little bit about how at the end of a campaign, you look back and measure your success.
Yep. Now's your time to shine or to learn. Now is the time to check back on your goals and to see if you've reached them. And this is the time for you to measure them. So questions to consider is like, how did it go? What went well? What didn't? Did you reach your goals? So a lot of the reasons why measuring your success is so important is because by analyzing what content resonated with your audience the most, what type of post they liked the best, and what channels drove the most engagement or the most sales, you can get a solid idea of where and what you could improve for next year's holiday campaign, or even for any type of other campaign. So again, by focusing on the goals and by focusing on how you did, you're able to gain insights on what worked and what didn't. Another thing that I think is just super important to keep in mind at the beginning of your campaign is to make sure that your campaigns are trackable by setting up trackable UTM links. When you make your campaigns trackable, you can measure everything that happens after the click. And by after the click, I mean once you've left the social media platform and you're on the landing page, you're able to track whether somebody actually landed on that page. So that would be accounted as a landing page view. You're able to see things like bounce rate or adds to cart, purchases, and much, much more. And lastly, this is your time to shine. If you did meet your goals, then you can share them with the entire company, with the wider team, with the marketing team, and take that time to celebrate.
Yeah. I shared this little screenshot of what Analyze looks like for anyone that hasn't jumped into the Analyze platform and our features that come with the analytics and reporting. This is what a campaign would look like when you're looking at it after the fact. And so I grabbed our Built to Last, which was a podcast series that we did kind of on brands starting up, and it was super fun. So this is looking back at that campaign in particular. So you're able to see kind of the new followers that you gained from it. This is going to measure across your social channels, your impressions, engagements, comments, and things like that. So it's really helpful to just streamline that process in terms of measuring that success. And I think it can be a really great way to also celebrate, as you were saying. And that kind of brings us to the end. So celebrating and saying thank you. I think that's something that that we sometimes forget. But I think that celebrating kind of reveals a unique opportunity to also celebrate with your audience and share maybe any goals that you met. So maybe you were striving to meet a specific number of followers, and so through your campaign you've achieved that. So maybe you want to do something to give back and say thank you to their audience, and maybe sharing a discount code or running a contest or something like that, I think could be really helpful. What are some ways that we celebrate?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ways that so this is from my experience at Brandless, but one way that we celebrated just with products and being a D2C company, you also get a lot of user generated content. So I think like ending the campaign by celebrating the people that talked about us during that period, or that, showcase the holiday marketing campaign in their own Instagram stories or in a tweet. I think taking all of that content and making some sort of post out of it, whether that's a carousel or just an Instagram story series, that's, I think, a way, as you said before, but that's a great way to showcase all of your customers. And again, it makes them feel really, really special. So definitely, make sure that you're collecting all of the user-generated content that comes in, and also reviews. And again, this doesn't have to only be specific to social media. Let's go into other marketing channels, and let's think about email. Like, send out an email to everyone with the user-generated content and let your customers know about the goals that you've reached. Or even on your website, why not add user-generated content to your website? It makes it feel real, and you actually give social proof. So those are just, a couple of ones that come to mind that I think are really important.
I think it's fun. Buffer, we have such a culture of transparency, and so I think it's always really neat to see the ways that we do that. But that's not limited to any one business. I think the more that you can be transparent and share some of those goals that you had or learnings that you've had throughout it, I think those are all things to celebrate and be excited about. So even if you didn't hit every goal, you've learned something in the process, and why not share that with the audience? Because there likely is someone out there that is either interested in it or and following your journey maybe, and people want to connect, and that's another way that you invite them into connecting with you, and you become very real. So super cool. So is it too late if you haven't started kind of developing your strategy yet? I know I mentioned that we've heard some brands starting as early as June and July for launches in September. We're in the end of October right now, so can people still take advantage of getting ready and doing this?
Yes, people can definitely take advantage of it. I think now you still have enough time. But even if, this week is too busy and you only have like a couple of weeks left, that's okay. Again, as I mentioned before, it's okay to scale back on some of your more ambitious ideas. So if you had an amazing idea for an influencer collaboration or a photo shoot idea, then just keep them for next year. It's okay. I think it's a lot of the times things that look a little bit more native or that feel a little bit more real work a lot better. It doesn't have to be all perfect looking, or it doesn't have to have that lifestyle feel to it, especially if you're in the like D2C industry. the more real it looks, and the more is even sometimes not, I wouldn't say necessarily ugly, because you still want it to be on brand, but focusing on just the people, and sometimes just like when it looks like you put a little bit less work into it, like that's totally okay. I'm sure your audience will find appreciation for that as
I feel like
well.
it's relatable when it's not
It's
completely
relatable.
curtailed to every
Exactly.
standard. And so it's just kind of like, hey, like we don't always have the finished product, or here's what it looks like in the process, like because there's a process that goes
Absolutely.
into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give like an example here. So if you haven't heard of Remix, but it's one of the apps that we use for content creation. So even using Remix is a great example of like something that you can do super quickly. So if you have a product page link, or if you have a tweet link, and you want to transform that link into an image really quickly in just a few seconds, then use Remix. I use it all the time for Buffer. In fact, if you go to our Instagram page, you'll find a lot of these like tweets where it's just like an image with a tweet in it, and it just works really well on social media. And I've noticed a lot of brands are using it right now. But even things like Remix are great because, again, it takes you just a few seconds, and all you had to do was write up some copy for a tweet, then take that linked tweet, paste it into Remix, and there you go. You can change the sizing, the background, and what else? And then there's a lot of different templates that we've already created. Super easy. And then also product link. If you have like a product link or a blog post link, take that, put it into Remix, and you've got it in just a few seconds.
I shared the link in the chat for anyone that's interested in Remix.
Perfect.
So you can
Yeah.
grab that and hop over and give that a look too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great tool. I personally love it. And then also just speaking about Remix, just something that came to mind now, but I'm running a promotion, like an advertising promotion on Facebook for Remix right now. And a while ago, I think a few months ago, I took just a video of myself talking about Remix and kind of doing a walkthrough of the platform. And I did it for Instagram stories. And, I was thinking about like, oh, like I have to come up with some content for our paid ads. I'm like, what should I do? What should I do? It's like, I don't have much time, right? So I'm like, oh, perfect. Let me just take those videos that I took of myself. It was just it was super simple. It was just here. I recorded myself talking about Remix, and then I popped that into our paid ads, and there you go. It's working great. And that's just an example of how easy it can be to come up with content.
Yeah, we chat a lot on the Science of Social Media podcast about reusing content and the power of repurposing things that you've already made. So when you think about creating content, don't think that you every single time have to have this brand new piece of content. You can always repurpose things that you've already done that are relevant to kind of what you're focusing on. So don't forget about that content that you've put time and energy into.
Yes, if you're running on a tight timeline, then definitely just remember that you need to also make sure that it is made for the platform that you're working in, right? So, for example, for this video, I needed to add closed captioning into it, and thankfully I had saved the video without all of the like Instagram stickers that say like swipe up or anything, so it worked perfectly for that. And so I popped into another app and I added the closed captioning, and there you go.
Yeah. The slide that's up on the screen right now, the how to start now, it's just a simple little template of a few 4 checkpoints that you can check off. We'll share this as a PDF too if you're someone like me, especially with National Checklist Day being tomorrow. This is a great checklist, so feel free to print it out. It'll come in the email that you all receive. For anyone that's attending live, you'll get that email tomorrow with the copy of the link to the video, so you can watch the playback if you would like. And then we'll also include the PDF for you as well. Well, that about wraps up our chat. We're going to open it up for questions right now. Feel free to add those to the questions area if you haven't already, and we'll work from there. Just a reminder not to put them in the chat area, put them in the Q&A. And if, before we jump into those questions, if any of you are interested in checking out our other webinars, feel free to head over to buffer.com/webinars. There's lots of great content there, playbacks of past webinars, demos, all kinds of things that you can explore. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for the moment, and let's hop into the Q&A area. Uh, Brian asked, will the list of goals you just shared be available in writing? Yeah, absolutely, Brian. We can share that with you. I'll likely turn the slides into a PDF as well so that you can have all of the slides to reference if you need them. So thanks for asking, Brian.
Yeah, and then I think Brian, I think you were referencing also the examples of goals that I gave at the beginning, which is like one example could be increasing your engagement rate or shifting your brand positioning. If it is that, then I'll make sure to add it in the slides as well, because I don't think I added those examples.
Carrie asked, can you use the same copy for Facebook and Instagram? What do you think, Sophie?
Yes, you can. Again, what is important to keep in mind here is just that you need to be cautious of just the wordings that you use. So an example I keep giving over and over again, especially because it's really easy to forget, is you're not going to have head to the link in our bio for Facebook. Or, sometimes you also want to be careful with, share your comments with us below or above. You need to be careful about the wording that you use, because each platform is different. And then also Twitter, for example, it's not so much like comment, it's more reply to our tweet. So, or, quote tweet. Now Twitter has quote tweets. So just keep that in mind. In terms of the length of the post copy, I don't think it really makes a difference. So on both Instagram and Facebook, I don't think there's really a difference there. But what I mentioned before, I think, is just be cautious of the audience that you have on each platform. So even just through Buffer, you're able to kind of get an idea of your demographics on each of the followers on each of your platforms. So just make sure that you keep that in mind when you're posting.
Yeah, one thing within Publish, when you're creating your content. So if you click on what do you want to share, you start drafting that post, you have everything in there. If you have kind of the basic wording that you're wanting to share for your copy, then you select your other channels. It'll populate that into the other channels, and then you can customize by social channel. And so then you could hop in there. So for Instagram, you could add your hashtags into the first comment. So then you're utilizing that feature. For Twitter, you can add in some hashtags there as well, so that you're pulling more people into that post and making sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities. So if you haven't found that within the Publish dashboard, feel free to let us know in the chat area, Brian, and we can link some articles that would help you find how to customize by social platform. Brian's asking, is TikTok and LinkedIn being added to Buffer scheduling? Great question. So LinkedIn currently is available for scheduling. TikTok is not something that we're currently working on an integration for, unfortunately. Sorry. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question, Brian. All right. Chris is asking, how to expand to new markets and demographics? Oh, this is right up Sophie's alley.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, first of all, I would really focus first on, well, yeah, I have to think about this one for a second, because for Buffer, we're global. So the first step that I kind of take is analyzing our current followers and making sure that we're kind of speaking to the followers. But I haven't really worked before in a place where we're trying to expand into a new market. So
I think thinking about within the functions that you have within the social platforms to target certain demographics, I think that's also a really great place to start. So if you have I think as Sophie mentioned, starting with looking at who your current followers and who your current market and demographics are reaching. So understanding that first, and then kind of work back from there. So then maybe you want to start targeting things. Maybe you want to do a paid campaign where you're targeting that specific demographic. And then once you kind of start, I think, to get into gaining people from that market, I think then you increase your chances of becoming visible to those markets and those demographics. So the algorithm, I think, works in your favor there probably in terms of once you start reaching those people, it kind of continue and they're engaging and following, then it kind of, you have the opportunity to kind of keep going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I think starting with paid promotion can be a really good way to just start out.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to mention is I often use Facebook Insights. I can actually drop a link in here, or maybe Heather May, if you could. Or here, let me just grab it. But Facebook Insights is great because you can, first of all, you can connect it to your page, and then once you connect it to your page, you can see all of the other interests that your followers have. But then, apart from that, you can also set in, you could also put as a setting like, oh, I want to see the interests that people have in this specific country, or I want to see, I want to look at a little bit into my competitors or into a completely different industry. So if you put a setting of like, okay, I want to see all of the interests and demographics of people that follow this specific page or people that live in this specific area, then I think you can already start to understand a little bit more about the interests that those people have. And by taking that, you can use that information to kind of form your copy and your creative. And that information is also really, really important for when you're doing paid advertising. So again, in paid advertising, if you see that all of these people are interested in this specific TV show or this specific book, or they use these types of mobile apps, then you can use that in your detailed targeting. And that's a great way to sort of expand within that paid advertising space, and then again, just to learn about those new markets.
Yeah. We have an anonymous question. Can you offer specific tactics to try during a holiday campaign? There will be a lot of noise on social channels during the holiday season. How can a brand boost impressions and reach? How can you top the social channel algorithms to get more eyes on your content or promotion? So this is a topic that we didn't talk a whole lot about, but I think hashtags are a really great way to leverage this opportunity. So not the most used hashtags. Look at some of the other hashtags that are trending. So keeping an eye on things that are related to the market that you're targeting. And of course, there's going to be hashtag holiday 2020 or all of those types of common hashtags. So I would think about ones that are similar but relevant to your market. Sophie, I know that you've kind of thought about some of the hashtag stuff. Do you want to share a little bit about how you might leverage those?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, hashtags are really important because they do get your content in front of an audience that doesn't already follow you. And so a couple of ways that you can find relevant hashtags is, well, first of all, just going into Instagram or Twitter, and as you search for one specific hashtag, a lot of the times they'll give you also suggested hashtags, because your goal with hashtags is not so much to find the ones that are most popular, but to find the ones that are really niche to your to what you're selling or what you're providing. So yeah, I think going into Instagram and Twitter again, and using the recommended hashtags there. Another way to find hashtags is to look for influencers or industry leaders within your specific industry, and see what hashtags they're using. I think that's another way to find good hashtags. And then also to kind of chime in on, again, those practical tips. One thing that I'd recommend and that definitely works is, I talked about industry leaders and influencers, but do interact with the comments that are going on in the posts of these influencers and these industry leaders, because the same people that will be following these influencers are most likely going to also be interested in what you have to offer. So I think just by conversing with these people and like replying to comments, or even being the first person to answer, or as a brand being the first person to answer in a post that they just shared, I think that really it gives a little bit of brand awareness. So I think another recommendation would be like, go into Instagram, and for the specific influencers, turn on the setting of like to get notified whenever that influencer is posting, because so that you'll get a notification whenever that post goes live, and you'll be the first to comment. And when you're the first to comment, your comment will appear immediately. So that's one way. Another way I would say is consider micro influencers. Again, I think it's really important to find the spaces that are small but super specific. And so just start conversing. Start partnering with micro influencers. First of all, I know that a lot of influencers nowadays are super, super expensive. Mm-hmm. So really consider working with somebody that's a little bit smaller. And again, they will have a following that's super, super loyal. And I think if they trust the influencer, and if the influencer, trusts you and you've created this sort of relationship with them, then, yes, you'll pay possibly for that first time that you're working with them. But then if they love your product so much, they will just continue to promote it even afterwards, even years to come. So, so that's another small tip. I have a lot, but
yeah. If you're unfamiliar with the term micro influencers, those are going to be the influencers that have 10,000 or are in that like 10,000 follower range. Feel free to always email us at onboarding@buffer.com for social kind of strategy questions and things like that. We're always happy to answer those as well. We have a couple more questions. I know that we're right at that 12:30 mark, so I'm going to jump through a couple of these, and we may end up responding by email to the other ones. Okay. Anne asked, do you think the engagement rates drop if we post an advent calendar picture every day on Instagram? I would say it's not an ideal strategy. All of the social platforms are really going to be looking for quality content, and that's going to be unique. So when you reshare the same image over and over, it's definitely not doing you any benefit. So I would say that maybe try and find different types of images that relate to it, maybe alternate. And sometimes it's really neat to think about your Instagram in terms of the layout. And so maybe you want to do the advent calendar once a week or once every 3 days or something like that, and change it up a little bit. But I would say probably avoid that strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's see. We're going to take one more, and then I will respond by email for the other couple that are in there if Katie doesn't already type an answer. If you haven't checked the answered area, your questions in your chat box in the Q&A area, Katie might have responded by writing as well. So if you haven't spotted those. Let's see. You shared a list of the many types of social posts available on platforms. It's a good reminder that you don't have to do them all. Which would you recommend to make the biggest impact? My 2 cents is it really depends on your strategy and your audience and where you're kind of seeing the most engagement, would be my kind of first thought. So if you do have anything else you'd kind of want to share on that one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It really depends. Generally speaking, if you are in the B2C space, I would say Instagram, but again, I think you really need to test and see what works. Because you might end up finding out that TikTok is also a great one. I also know that I've talked with a lot of, other friends of mine that work in the social media space and that work in B2C, and they've actually found TikTok to work really, really well for them. But yeah, you just kind of have to try them all out and see what works best. That's the only recommendation that I have there.
Awesome. All right, this last question. Thank you all so much for sharing these questions. It's so fun to chat through all these. So Emily asked, could you talk more about paid boosts or promotions on your post on social or on Facebook or Instagram? Trying to convince manager it's a good option. What would you say? My first kind of thought is start small. It doesn't have to be a big spend. You can be really effective with a small campaign and a small amount. And once you've proven it, I think then you have a little bit more leverage to go back and say, hey, look, this performed really well. Another fun thing is that within Buffer, we actually provide, within Buffer Analyze, we provide analytics on your boosted and promoted post on Facebook and Instagram. So a really quick way to track the success of that. So you could create a campaign that is your small like trial boosted post or trial paid advertising campaign. Tag those posts as you create them, and then we'll be able to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with us today and for all of your really thoughtful questions. If you are watching live with us, as I mentioned before, you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. Feel free to share that with anyone that you'd like. And until we meet again, we wish you all a wonderful end of week. Bye, everyone.
Yes. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.